Hey guys, welcome to CJ Off-Road. Today we're... No. Oh yes, wrong channel, sorry. Hey guys, welcome to Poor Man Mods. Today we're going to be installing a 2.5-inch leveling kit on this 2021?
19.
That was close. 2019 Ford Ranger, but this kit is for a 2019 to a 2022 Ranger. 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive. This will be the Rough Country 2.5-inch leveling kit. As you can see, it has some nice aftermarket wheels and tires on it. I forget the specs off the top of my head. It rubs a smidge at full lock. Not sure if this leveling kit will fix it or not, but Tony wants a leveling kit on it regardless. So today, I'm going to show you how to install it. Okay, first thing we're going to do is remove the skid plate with a 15mm socket. And with imaginary friends, you can remove it. The next step that you're going to want to do is find the power steering unit right here and remove all 3 of these connectors. Got a flathead screwdriver here. You need to undo the Are You Sure clip on these, because really want you to be sure that you're disconnecting what you want to disconnect before you actually disconnect it. So they're called Are You Sure clips. Are you sure? Yes. And the reason we're doing this is Rough Country recommends that you do it. If you don't, for some reason, this module can get damaged. So this isn't hard to do, and it's good insurance. Just disconnect it, and you shouldn't have any problems. Now that we did the skid plate and the power steering, we're on to the suspension now. Take an 8mm socket and remove this bolt right here to get the ABS line off. Then down here is another 8 to actually remove the ABS sensor. To get it out, I put some pliers on there, wiggle it, and pull it out. And to keep it safe and out of the way, we'll tuck it up here and kind of get it tangled. And that's where it'll sit for a little bit. Then remove the 10mm holding on the brake hose. 18mm to remove the nut holding on the sway bar end link. And you might have to push down on the sway bar to actually get it to come out. 15mm socket to remove the tie rod. So I have a 15mm wrench where I will loosen the nut, and with my 7mm socket, have that in the tightening position to hold it. Now it's time to use my favorite tool. Take a hammer and hit right here to get the tie rod to come out. You don't want to hit on the tie rod itself. Take your 18mm socket again, loosen the nut for the upper control arm, but don't fully remove it. I got lucky on this one. As you saw, when I loosened the nut, the control arm lifted up a bit. If this gets stuck, you want to loosen the nut and hit right here or here with a hammer to separate it. But since ours is separating, I can just loosen the nut. The instructions for this kit warn about not letting this steering knuckle fall too far forward in fear that the CV shaft will separate in here. In my experience, on the other side when I did this, that did happen. It kind of came undone in here, and I had to put the shaft back together just by wiggling it and shoving it in. It wasn't that big of a deal, but that can happen. So just be careful with how far you let this down. Another thing you could try to do to avoid that, not sure if it's worth the effort or not, but loosening the axle nut here. But we're gonna see what happens. Now we're going to remove the 2 lower nuts for the strut. These nuts are also 18mm. It's gonna be hard to see, but there are 3 nuts on top of the strut here. Use a 15mm wrench to remove them. With all 3 nuts removed, we can now remove the strut from the vehicle. The way that I found that works pretty well for this, grab a pry bar, put it underneath the strut. This might be where that axle disconnects right there. All right, we're over at the workbench. We have the strut in the vise, and we need to remove these 2 bolts. A couple of different methods you could use to get the bolts out. The method that I used that worked, now I know you're not supposed to use a torch on a strut, but we're not making it super hot. Take a torch, warm up this area, and then we're gonna air hammer these bolts out. What? I'm definitely torching your strut. I'm definitely doing it to the point where it will explode. Oh, it'll be okay. Holy crap, that one had some force. Now just do that to the rest of them. Got both bolts out, now we can work on the spacer. Now for this spacer, we have to install the studs. There's 2 sets of holes. There's a smaller diameter hole set on this side and larger diameter holes on this side. You can see the stud easily goes all the way through the larger hole. That's not the one that we want. We want to install it into the smaller holes. The kit comes with a sacrificial nut to tighten this to draw it in, but I recommend putting a washer on there too. So we have the stud, the washer that I provided, their sacrificial nut that does not thread on, it's larger diameter, and then you can take one of the regular nuts, get it snug, and then we're going to lubricate the splines of the stud, and then with a 15 millimeter we're going to draw it in. The washer makes this much easier. I tried doing this without the washer and it seemed to bind up pretty bad. So I highly recommend using the washer. Get it nice and snug, break it loose, and then do this to the rest of them. Now we can install the spacer onto the strut. And then we're going to take the factory nuts and secure it with the factory nuts. Now we're going to take a 15 millimeter wrench and tighten the 3 nuts. Unfortunately, I don't think you can really use a socket on here because of the clearances, so you kind of have to use a wrench, unless you modify your socket to be very thin-walled. With all the nuts snugged by hand, I'm going to take my hammer and tap on the wrench to really snug them down. Now we can install the strut. The reason we removed the studs is because there just wouldn't be enough room to accommodate their length when installing this. So now we're going to put them in and send them home with a couple taps. These are pretty much started. They will seat the rest of the way, or we will make them seat the rest of the way when we tighten the nuts on the bottom. To make this a little bit easier, we'll lube them up. Place the nuts on the bottom. We'll get these started with an impact, but I'll finish it with a breaker bar. Wrong way. Wrong way, you dingus. A little bit more lube, and just so we don't damage anything, we'll finish it with the breaker bar. Okay, now that we have the bottom nuts tightened, we're going to test and see if our axle came out up here. And how you can test that is if this will easily spin. It's not spinning, so it seems like it came out. And pretty much to get it back in, wiggle this up and down and in and out, and this should eventually pop back in. Now the hard part by yourself is getting this nut back into the knuckle. Pretty much we're going to pull down on here, put all of our weight on it, try to get the nut on. Just pull down with all your strength and get that nut started. Pretty much, if you don't have that axle in all the way, this won't be possible. This won't go back far enough to let this happen. Now you can take the 3 nuts that came with the kit and install them up top to secure the strut up top. Enough. To get this tie rod in, we actually had to jack up on this whole assembly, have a 2x4 with a floor jack here. And then once you get the nut started, you can relieve the tension and let that down. We'll first try to use a impact to get this tie rod back installed. But we need other tools. So I have the sway bar end link disconnected from both sides now, and we're going to attempt to install them. So right now, both front struts are installed with the spacer, but we just need to connect the end link to really finish this. So we're going to try. Hold on, I'm going to push down real good on it in a second here.
I'm almost in.
Yep, see, you really got to push down. Ah, there we go. Now we'll get this ABS wire reconnected and also the brake hose. Then we'll get the sensor back in. Okay, that does it. We have everything buttoned up here. All you have to do now is go under the truck, reconnect the electrical connectors for the steering, and put the skid plate back on. I don't think I need to show you that. So let's get the wheels installed on here too, get it on the ground, and see how it looks. All right, got the leveling kit installed and... All right. Got the leveling kit installed and the truck is looking amazing. It is perfectly level. The new wheels and tires on this truck really changed the look, especially with the level. This truck looks seriously amazing. I'm loving the stance, love everything about it, and it did fix our rubbing issue. Before, we were rubbing at full lock just a little bit with these tires. Do you remember what the specs of the tires are?
265 70/17.
265 70/17, and we had a smidge of rub at full lock, but now it's been eliminated with this leveling kit, which is perfect. This kit, pretty simple to install. Very similar to F-150 leveling kits, obviously, except for the whole axle thing. That is a little bit different, so just be cautious of that. If it pops out, work it back in and make sure it's not bound up, but it's really not that big of a deal if it does pop out.
Test your four-wheel drive.
Yeah, test your four-wheel drive, test everything, make sure you don't hear bad noises, but if your axle does pop out, I don't think it's going to be likely. You'll be able to get the knuckle attached to the upper ball joint. I just don't think it'll happen. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you're interested in this lift kit, I'll try to have a link in the description down below to it. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.